Good afternoon. As you said, my name's Oliver Byrne, and I'm an architect at Atlassian for the last 6 years. And for the last 2 years, I've been working in Jira Software Cloud. You probably can't tell from my accent, but I actually have an Austrian mother who has a house in Linz. So I can't speak German, so please don't ask me questions in German afterwards. But it's really nice to be back in Austria. I've been here many times, but to be in a working engagement, it's really quite unique. So I'm enjoying that. So today, I'm excited to talk about integrating CI/CD pipelines with Jira Software. So this talk is really tailored for two types of people. One is for developers who are looking to integrate their own CI/CD tools with Jira Software Cloud and how you can do that. But then also, I'm assuming you're all software developers, and so just to make you aware of what integrations are available and how you can do integrations with Jira to improve your workflows. So 380,000 people view the dev info on the view issue page every day. It's actually more than that number, but I didn't update the slides because I'm going to have to go through legal. So it's a lot of people who actually look at the developer information every day. And the reason people do that is that they want to see contextual information about the work they're doing outside of Jira, but within Jira, because they want to see what's the state of the issue and they can see what's happening. So previously, the developer panel and the information shown was based on a closed pool-based integration where Jira would have to build an integration, for example, for GitHub, and we would go and retrieve the information. So I'm happy to say that we've really opened up. So we've basically pivoted the whole thing on its head, and we've changed from being closed to being open. And we now provide APIs to allow anybody to actually provide the information and to integrate it into Jira themselves. So you can provide contextual information about what's in progress, has something shipped to customers, what state is it in. So we now have 4 APIs. So we've gone from 1 to 4. So we have the dev info API, which is all around Git, which is the commits, branches, and pull requests, which is what's known so well today. We have an API which is dedicated purely to providing the status for builds. The build was successful, things that just run backwards and forwards. An example would be Bitbucket pipelines or Jenkins. We have an API for tracking deployments. So you run a build, the build produces an artifact, but then you need to deploy that artifact into environments. And so we have an API that allows you to track a deployment through the different environments until it gets into production. And then finally, we have an API for feature flags, which is a common technique these days that you deploy your features into production, and then you turn on a flag to roll it out gradually to customers. So these APIs basically give you a full breadth of the whole development cycle, from doing the development, testing it, pushing it through the environments, and actually deploying it and releasing it to customers. So how would it work if you want to integrate with Jira Software Cloud? Well, the traditional way with the cloud is you build a Connect app. And with Connect apps, you need to provide a descriptor which says, what is your app going to do in Jira Software Cloud? So we have module descriptors or module definitions for each of our 4 APIs. So you would define a Connect app, and you'd say which of the APIs you're wanting to call. And then you provide that into the marketplace. By publishing it into the marketplace unlocks certain features, which I'll talk about shortly. So you've got a Connect app that's running. The next thing you need to do is you need to detect when things are happening in the CI/CD tool that you want to integrate. So a typical thing you might want to listen for is when a pull request is created, or a build fails, which is usually my case. But basically something that's happened. And then what you need to do is you need to have worked out something has happened, I need to create a payload that I'm going to send to Jira, and I need to associate it with Jira issue keys. So the last thing you need to do is to construct the event payload, which is a JSON blob, and I'll show one a little bit later on. And you need to send that to Jira. And it's just done through a simple REST API. And once you provide that data to Jira, Jira will then take care of the whole user journey and experience. So from the point of view of actually doing an integration, it's very light. You just have to detect the changes, create the payload, and send it in, and then the whole experience is done for you by Jira. So there are a number of integrations that are available already today. So for the developer information, we've got Bitbucket. GitHub has got their own Connect app, which you can install if you're using GitHub. And Big Brass Band, I don't know, I love that company name. But they provide support for integrating many other Git providers and providing the information into Jira. For builds, we have pipelines, Jenkins, which I'll touch on again in a minute, but Azure pipelines and many others. And the same thing for deployments, the same usual suspects are up there, but also, for example, Octopus Deploy, which is a deployment who specialize in doing deployments. And finally, for feature flagging, we have the standard integrations available. So I should stress that these integrations are not written by Atlassian, except for the Bitbucket ones, but actually the third parties are actually building those integrations. So for example, the GitHub integration is actually built by GitHub. So once this data is provided to Jira, what do you get today out of the box? So the first thing you get is on the view issue. We provide, on the right-hand side, we provide support for the glance model, which the intention is to give you a summary view of what's going on, that contextual information I'm talking about. So for example, in this example, you can see that there's been some development, there's some branches, some commits, and there's been a release to production. Where necessary, and I'll show you in a minute, you can drill down for further information. On the boards, we provide the ability to use quick filters to be able to filter the board. So for example, you could say, show me all the issues that are currently open that have pull requests, have pull requests that are open, or builds that are failing. My favorite feature is actually JQL. So we actually take all that information and we index it against the issues. And this opens up the full power of the Jira query language for you to be able to slice and dice the data. So for example, it's very easy to run a query to say, for my project Fuse, show me all the issues that have been deployed to production, but the feature flag is not yet at 100% rollout. That could be where you're trying to find things that haven't actually been finished that are done. Or another example could be that show me all issues that are flagged as done, but have pull requests that are open. So you can do that all through JQL. And we plan to do a lot more things. So discovery and onboarding is really a powerful one. So I mentioned before that if you provide a Connect app and you publish it into the marketplace, you're actually signifying what type of integration you are. So for example, you could be a build provider integrator. So what we can do now in Jira is we can detect that you are in a Jira software project, and we can also detect that you have not actually set up any integrations yet for any of the build providers. So we can provide contextually within Jira a prompt to the user to say, we noticed that you haven't installed any build providers. Here are some of the integrations that we have available. And we can populate that by what's available in the marketplace. We also have we're planning to have the ability to query back the data. So we're going to be receiving all these events about what's going on. We want to be able to expose the data back out again. We're not trying to get it and keep it to ourselves. We want to expose it out to enable app developers to invent new capabilities. So an example could be that you could query to say, tell me about all the deployments that have happened in the last 60 days. Or show me the feature flag rollout. And finally, we just want to basically the ability for you guys to query the data and then use it as you could want to use it yourselves. So words are nice. So now I've just got a little pre-canned demo to show you what actually is possible. So this integration is showing Bitbucket pipelines with Jira. And here I'm using the quick filters on a board to see what's being deployed to production. Once that's done, we can drill in on a particular issue. And what you can see here is the information on the right-hand side. Initially, we show that the feature is in production, but we can now drill down and see the progression, how it went from test to staging to production, which is the time series that we're keeping track of. By clicking on the link, we can go out to the build tool provider, in this case the deployment provider, to land in their page. So this is, for example, Azure Pipelines now provides deployment integrations. When you click on the links, you go to the Azure side. So you have full control as to where you go. And then finally, we saw the round tripping that within pipelines, you can navigate back to Jira. So we have the 4 APIs, and they're all similar in style. Excuse me. First of all, we've pivoted from being closed to being open, and we've changed from we have to go and get the information from you to being you have to push the data in. And we've done that for a few reasons, and a couple of the ones is, first of all, Atlassian can provide a much faster user experience, because when we ask to render a view issue, we have all the data there immediately. We're not required to go out to get it. And also, we have the ability to be firewall friendly, because you're pushing the data to us. Customers are much more likely to allow outbound requests through firewalls than having Atlassian call in. The APIs are event-driven, which means we're trying to collect all the events that are taking place. This means that it opens up the ability to us to first of all give you timelines of information, so you can see how long builds is taking to start and to finish, the steps that a deployment is going through. That's very important information. It also means we can do things in the future, potentially like automations. We've noticed that a build has failed. Even though the user hasn't gone and looked at the view issue, we could start an automation to do something. My favorite would obviously be to turn a lava lamp to red. I mean, that's what everyone wants to do. The APIs are all consistent in structure. So they're JSON payloads, they're events that have sequences. But a good example of where they're consistent in structure is both deployments and feature flags are all related to an environment. So we have this concept of an environment that is shared amongst the APIs. We model those in exactly the same way. Wherever possible, we have states, we try to use the same states. And also, very importantly, we've designed it for being bulk friendly. What we mean by this is, there's a lot of events flying around. We want to make it efficient for you to deal with it. And so several ways we've done that is we allow you to push a lot of build results or a lot of deployment results in one call. So we're not expecting lots of little calls. But then the other one, which is very important, is we support tagging. So when you submit some information, you can tag it with up to 5 properties that you see fit to allow you to do efficient deletion. So let me give you an example of a use case. Bitbucket Pipelines sends in build results to Jira today. Every time they send us a build result, they tag it with the repository ID. And the reason they do that is they will send us hundreds and thousands of build results associated with the repository. But if that repository gets deleted, they don't have to remember all the issues that they sent the build result to. They just have to send us one call which says, delete everything I ever told you that I tagged with this repository ID. So these are ways that we're trying to make it actually very efficient for you to have a reliable integration. So what we've got here is a sample payload. It's just a JSON blob, so it's obviously easy, but no, joking. You can see here that you flag what issue keys you want to associate a build result with, what state it is. So we've defined what are the legal states. So effectively, we harmonize every build provider. So in theory, you could switch out one build provider for another one. And then we have here the display name, the description, the URL. And this information is what we use to render the display and what we use to index into Jira for JQL search. So as a bonus, I'm really happy to say that we just in the last month have unreleased 2 new features. The first one is we now support OAuth credentials within Jira. What does this mean? It means you can go to a Jira site now, and under the Apps section, you can go and create some OAuth credentials. Those OAuth credentials are scoped to that Jira site, and when you create them, you have to say which of the 3 APIs that we currently support you're wishing to call. We currently support builds, deployments, and developer information. With those OAuth credentials, it means that you can use a tool like curl, for example, to send in information associated, to be associated against Jira issues. This is really powerful if you wanted to do integration with your own, for example, your own custom build tool, your own feature flag tool. You have the ability now to do an easy integration with Jira. The flip side is with the OAuth credentials that they're not visible in the marketplace, and so if you have an offering, it won't be visible in the marketplace today, subject to change. Related to that, we've realized, we know Jenkins is the predominant build and deployment tool out there in the market. So we've now open sourced a Jenkins plugin that uses these new OAuth credentials. So it's now possible that you can have your on-prem Jenkins build tools sending builds and deployment information to Jira Software. So this is the screen ignore the beta. It's now out of beta at the time of the slides. It was in beta. How you can go and create the OAuth credentials. And the other thing I want to point about these OAuth credentials is that it's a very safe way to do an integration. These OAuth credentials only allow you to call, for example, a build API if that's the only scope you give it, and you can only send and only get back out of Jira the data that you provided. It doesn't open up the whole Jira instance so that you can go and query and read all of the Jira issues. So it makes it quite safe as an integration. And this is an example of, from a Jenkins pipeline file, what's possible now with our the open source plugin. So what you can see here is this is a stage for deployment, which happens on master. And we now support a step, which is the Jira send deploy info. And what this is doing is it would send up to that Jira instance the fact that this deployment has been successful or unsuccessful. And you can see the last 3 lines there are about specifying what environment this deployment was for. That's required because then we can use that information. All the credentials are stored off in the Jenkins secure store. So I've just talked about a lot of things there. So there's some references here that you can look at. So all the REST APIs, which describe in great detail what all the payloads are for all of the APIs, is described on the developer.atlassian.com website. Equally, the module types that you need for a Connect app are described up there under the Jira modules. For those of you who want to get started on building a Connect app, it's actually quite easy, and we provide a sample, it says add-on, but a sample app which can bootstrap how you can go and build an integration. And I've got to stress again, the integration is really just about providing the data to Jira and let Jira take care of everything else. And we have provided the plugins available on the Jenkins marketplace, and as well here you can find information. So thank you very much. Happy for questions.